Well, joining us now, Kevin Vuong, Canadian Member of Parliament. Thank you very much, Mr. Vuong, for being with us. It is very sad, India and Canada relations at this all-time low. One of the points, how would you respond to those who say that the Canadian statement alleging that there isn't conclusive evidence at the moment against the Indian diplomats or Indian officials who are allegedly involved in the murder of Nijjar, is that deeply problematic that perhaps we should have seen a lot more of this evidence first?
So Vishnu, I think it's important for me to first say that Canada and India, we have long-standing history as fellow democracies, as members of the Commonwealth, but also the significant people-to-people ties, trade, and business. And I think those ties will remain and outlast any government. So in terms of your question, it is alarming. Like, we need to look at the facts and let's put everything in context. Canada, under Justin Trudeau, has been a doormat for foreign interference. And chief among those interfering in Canada has been the Chinese Communist Party. Now, let's be clear, though, a Canadian was murdered. And while Mr. Nijjar was obviously no choir boy, Canada as a country, just like India and any democracy, must be governed by rule of law. And if there's a murder, perpetrators have to be held accountable. But it is odd for the RCMP to host a press conference on a national holiday here in Canada that didn't really tell much, but conveniently happened to be the day before the Prime Minister's office was to take the stand on the issue of foreign interference, predominantly from the Chinese Communist Party, and only 2 days before the Prime Minister was. And so when he did take the stand, what happened? Instead of being held to account for turning a blind eye to Chinese foreign interference, he spent a significant time now speaking about these allegations of India's involvement, but when asked, is unable to present any evidence. How does that make any sense? And then for him to accuse people who have allegedly leaked intelligence on Chinese foreign interference as being criminals, only for us to find out that a week before Thanksgiving, his own national security and intelligence advisor briefed the Washington Post, a foreign media outlet, on India's alleged involvement. How does that make any sense? And so when you sit back, any normal, rational Canadian, any rational Indian, any rational thinking individual would question these two different approaches and ask if there is another motivation.
You know, what's a matter of huge concern over here in India is that for decades there have been concerns about Khalistani elements in Canada. In fact, there have been at least 26 extradition requests. And an extradition request is forwarded from India's government to the Canadian government after a process of due diligence. It's not been actioned upon. And a lot of these people, in fact, all as I understand it, haven't been brought back at all. So when India argues, or some in India argue that, look, there's a sense of double standards over here, India being accused of the murder of a Khalistani terrorist, but Canada having done absolutely nothing in terms of extraditing people who we believe have a strong criminal background. How would you respond to that?
And one of the things, Vishnu, that I reflect a lot about was it was a Khalistani extremist who committed the most violent and deadly terrorist attack in the world and when it came to aviation terrorism up until 9/11. The bombing of the Air India Flight 182, that is still the most deadly terror attack on Canadians, that killed Canadians. And it took 25 years for the victims and their families to get even piecemeal justice. And yet, Khalistani extremists continue to terrorize not just Indians abroad. I'm focused first and foremost on Canadians of Indian heritage. And even earlier this year, an Air India memorial was disrupted by Khalistani extremists who are perpetuating conspiracy theories and other things. And I continue to look at this government and ask them why. Why do they turn a blind eye to this? Why are they not stepping up to protect Canadians, not only of Indian heritage, but all others from any sort of extremist violence?
A final question. I was speaking to Ambassador Sanjay Verma, who was recalled to New Delhi at the end of this entire process. And he made a point which a lot of people in India would really take notice of, that India has the largest cohort of international students in Canada. Canadian institutions do fabulously with the involvement of Indian students, not just for their academic prowess, but because, I mean, it is a lot of revenue as well for them. That there may be, in fact, Khalistani attempts by those close to the Khalistani cause to reach out to students, to try and influence them, to try and get them to be a part of their cause. Now, when you have 17, 18, 19-year-old kids in a country halfway around the world, potentially being, I won't use the word targeted, but potentially being influenced by terrorist elements, then it becomes a huge problem. What would you tell the parents of these students, and what would you tell Indo-Canadians in your own constituency?
So I will be the first to say, I think, first and foremost, as a son of immigrants myself, I am grateful to Indians who choose to make Toronto, and many have chosen to make my community, my city, their home. Thank you for bringing us your talent and your skills. And for those who stay and continue to contribute, thank you. Now, I think there has been a real failure under this government's watch when it comes to the integrity of Canada's immigration systems, but also to ensure that those who do come have the right supports that they need. And because they've essentially flung open the doors, there have been people who, unlike those students, Vishnu, that you refer to, who are applying to come to study and do it the right way and are following all of the rules. There are those who are exploiting it and coming through the cracks. And those bad actors are people that Canada has a duty to fight, to hold to account and deport if they're not Canadians.
Correct.
So that Indian students and any international students who choose to come to study in Toronto, my city, or anywhere else in Canada can do so that they can focus on their education without worry for them or their parents that they will be exploited or unduly influenced in a way that is harmful to both of our democracies.
Absolutely. Mr. Vuong, thank you very much for being with us and sharing your thoughts. But I do tend to agree with you. At the end of the day, the relationship between India and Canada needs to be back up, and hopefully that will happen sooner than later. At the moment, though, it is a very unfortunate low in the relationship between Ottawa and New Delhi. But thank you very much for joining us, sharing your thoughts.
Thank you very much for having me, Vishnu. And hopefully next time we speak, it's because Canada and India's relations are improving. Take care.
Thank you.